Good afternoon. This is Dave Jones with Storm Center Communications and GeoCollaborate. This is a update on Tropical Storm Ian. Based on the Hurricane Center's 11 a.m. update, we're getting everything together here. I guess it looks like about 12:30 or so Eastern time. And we have a strengthening storm once again. We have Tropical Storm Ian that is moving off of the eastern Florida coastline around the Space Coast right now, but it is already intensified as far as its wind speed goes. Ian is a very persistent, a very large storm with a very expansive wind field, which is already pushing tides higher than average along the Georgia and South Carolina coastlines. Matter of fact, in southern North Carolina, tides are a bit higher than normal. This is what it looks like. The latest GOES satellite loop, you can see that distinct rotation still happening. And as Ian moves off the coast, it has been, through most of its track, has been very stubborn in remaining to the east side of the official Hurricane Center forecast track, and it is emerging off of the ocean into the ocean a little bit faster than predicted. Now, what that means, though, is we're going to have more opportunity for Ian to strengthen, and that's indeed what the National Hurricane Center is forecasting, a strengthening tropical storm into another Category 1 hurricane before it's forecast to make landfall in coastal South Carolina. Now, I want to show you GeoCollaborate and what that looks like here, because GeoCollaborate is tracking a lot of things here going on. There's a lot of activity. Of course, we have the recovery happening in Florida from not just the devastating winds and storm surge on the southwest Florida coast, from Naples to Fort Myers to Charlotte Harbor, Punta Gorda, and places to the north as well. But we've had tremendous amounts of rain overnight. Look at this. This is the latest rainfall totals that have happened with the path of Ian. And this purple area with some blue are rainfall totals in excess, in some cases, of 20 inches of rain. And you can see it tails off a little bit, but this whole area from Tampa, St. Petersburg, through Central Florida to the Palm Coast and south all the way to Miami, major rainfall totals have been recorded here. And particularly just to the northwest of the center of the storm, we've had just historic rainfall totals in this area of the state. There are ongoing rescues happening because of the storm surge in Fort Myers. There's lots of search and rescue happening in Naples as we speak. But I'm going to focus here on the path of this storm and what's expected over the next day or so. Matter of fact, I'll take this full screen so you can see it a little bit more clearly. We have the forecast, the current forecast for the National Hurricane Center has Ian curving into central South Carolina as a Category 1 hurricane with winds of 75 miles per hour. That's just before 8 o'clock, this position, so that's about the time of landfall, between 8 and 10 o'clock a.m. expected tomorrow. But that really is not the big story. The big story is the size of Ian's wind field. I want you to take a look at the initial wind radius. Look at that. This area is the area of tropical storm force winds. That's winds of 39 to 74 miles per hour right now. So we're talking at 12:30 in the afternoon on Thursday. And as this storm moves over the ocean and intensifies, this wind field will likely get a little bit larger as well, and so will the inner core of the storm. Will develop hurricane force winds, redevelop hurricane force winds over the ocean here. So the path of the storm is currently over central South Carolina, but as Ian has been historically persistent in its eastward track, we can't rule out landfall further up in South Carolina, in this part of the cone, or even further north. So please pay attention to your local National Weather Service offices and the National Hurricane Center. Of course, in the Fleet Response Working Group, GeoCollaborate updates immediately as soon as the Hurricane Center issues new products, so you can access it through the dashboard. One of the other things that we see here along the coastline, look at this. These are storm surge numbers up and down the coastline, and it extends all the way to almost the Virginia state line. So we'll start here in the south. Along Florida and Jacksonville, we're already seeing above average tides here. And I'm going to click on this storm surge area along North Carolina, and I'm sorry, along Georgia and northern Florida. So this is from the Flagler Volusia County line to Edisto Beach in South Carolina. There is a 4 to 6 foot storm surge that is being forecast. This is max storm surge from the National Hurricane Center. So preparations should be underway for a 4 to 6 foot storm surge in that location. As we get further to the north, in parts of central South Carolina, and I'm going to turn the wind radii off here so we can get a little bit more specific. So here we go in coastal South Carolina. We're talking about a 4 to 7 foot storm surge that's being predicted from Edisto Beach to the South Santee River in central South Carolina, 4 to 7 feet. And then to the north of that, we're talking about a 3 to 5 foot storm surge from the South Santee River in central South Carolina to the Little River Inlet. That's a 3 to 5 foot storm surge. Now, there's an additional storm surge because the wind field is so large with this storm. There's an additional storm surge being forecast for coastal North Carolina. And so let me just back out here. Sorry about that. For coastal North Carolina, we're talking about a 2 to 4 foot storm surge that's being forecast from the Little River Inlet, which is right here on the border of South Carolina and North Carolina, all the way up to Duck. That's 2 to 4 feet that's being forecast, and that includes Pamlico Sound. You see Pamlico Sound here, a 2 to 4 foot storm surge is being forecast. Now, you see, it's so far away from the storm. You're saying, how can that be possible? Well, it's because that wind field is so large in this storm, and it's expanding out as well. So what about other impacts as far as the storm is concerned? And we're forecasting it to be a hurricane at landfall. The National Hurricane Center is forecasting it. I'm going to turn off the coastal inundation data, and I'm going to turn on the weather watches and warnings. So this kind of lights up like a Christmas tree when we turn these on, and you can see what's going on. I'll quickly go through these just so you know what's going on. Here in the coastal sections of Georgia and South Carolina, we have tropical cyclone statements that are going on here for rainfall totals that could produce inland flooding and also storm surge. Just inland, a little bit further, we also have another tropical cyclone statement, and I'll just take a look at this here. I'll pull it up in real time. This tropical cyclone statement is basically talking about impacts of surge and flooding rain and wind. So there is a good chance that there could be things like minor roof damage, damage to siding, large trees snapped or uprooted, and potential for tornadoes. That occurs and is being issued for Georgia in these counties all the way to the coastline. So east of Macon, well east of Macon. However, this area here is a wind advisory for the rest of Georgia. Now, a wind advisory means that winds could be 30 to 40 miles per hour and gust to 50 miles per hour as this storm makes its way closer to the coastline. That could cause tree damage and power lines out. And so we have lots of power and utility vehicles that are staging to respond in Georgia. A whole lot of utility vehicles that are entering the state of Florida right now. But that looks like the impacts for this storm. So we're talking now in Georgia about wind impacts with high wind gusts up to 50 miles per hour. We're talking about rainfall totals that could be in the 3 to 7 inch range. I'll show you that prediction here in just a moment, because I think the real rainfall immediate impacts are going to be along the coastline and then just to the north and west of the center of the storm where that moves in. There's going to be a distinct cutoff through Georgia on where those flooding rains could be. Now, in South Carolina, we also have tropical cyclone statements talking about inland wind and inland flooding as well. And that extends up into North Carolina. You can see here in North Carolina that there's other tropical cyclone statements, but there's also a tropical storm warning. Now, this is pretty amazing that there's a tropical storm warning so far inland with this storm, because it has been a very robust system. So tropical storm force winds are expected in these red areas here, and we can't display multiple colors at one time, but that extends down to the coastline here and all the way over to eastern North Carolina. You can see that this is a tropical cyclone statement in central North Carolina. There are also other statements talking about the wind and rain potential. Now, even up to coastal Maryland and the mouth of the Chesapeake Bay, there are gale warnings that are posted for this storm as it comes inland. So we have a bunch of weather happening because of Tropical Storm Ian, forecast to become Hurricane Ian once again. And I will turn off these warnings from the National Weather Service because I do want to show you the forecast of excessive rainfall. Now, the excessive rainfall outlook is here from the Weather Prediction Center. Anywhere you see green, yellow, or red, there is a chance of excessive rainfall causing very large areas to be flooded. Now, this is the one-day outlook. I want to turn that off and show you the day 1 through 7 quantitative. It's called quantitative precipitation forecast. So this is how much rain is forecast in this area because of the landfall of tropical storm, perhaps Hurricane Ian. Now take a look at this. These colors are there's a strong cutoff you see here in eastern Georgia. So the amount of rain that's expected to fall in eastern Georgia is between 2 and 5 inches of rain, 2 and 5 inches of rain. And then as you get closer to the center, that goes up. It goes up from 5 to perhaps 10 inches of rain along the path of the storm. And then we come back down again to 2 to 3 inches of rain, perhaps more, in Virginia and in North Carolina. The states of Virginia, North Carolina, South Carolina, Georgia, and Florida have declared states of emergency. We're going to be lighting up Virginia, North Carolina, and South Carolina this afternoon with the associated declarations and waivers, so the utility companies can get a hold of those waivers through GeoCollaborate and through the All Hazards Consortium and the Sensitive Information Sharing Environment. This, by the way, is a Phase 2 update, meaning that the event is underway, and in Florida, it's can be considered a Phase 3 update where we're starting the recovery phase. Now, what I'd like to show you, too, is going back down into Florida just for some damage assessment purposes. I want to show you some of the video that was just received of the Sanibel Causeway. The Sanibel Causeway, this is from Sky 10, a TV station in Tampa. You can see this is the approach to Sanibel. This is the causeway out of Fort Myers heading to Sanibel Island. The road has been washed out. There's been major breaches in the sand dunes there and the causeway. So there is going to be no vehicle traffic to and from Sanibel Island. Major catastrophic damage has occurred to the roadway there. And you can see that a part of the bridge there is intact, but there's been another part of that has been compromised. So that's a long way away from being used by any traffic. Over towards Orlando, this is I-4 westbound. There are off-ramps. This is at Route 536 in Orlando. This is showing major flooding across the entrance ramps and exit ramps because of the high volume of rain that they've had there. In some cases, 17 to 20 inches of rain. That's going to take a while to drain out, and so it's going to be a while before traffic is open. Contact the Department of Transportation website for the state of Florida. They're listing all of the roadways that are open and closed. And I do want to let everybody know that there are additional utility vehicles. We've showed you multiple days of utility vehicles that have gathered together. This is Tropicana Field in Tampa and St. Petersburg. You can see all the utility vehicles that are staged this morning to respond with Florida Power and Light and Duke Energy and utilities from around the country that have gathered to restore power as quickly as possible. This is going to be a long road, folks, to restore power. Damage assessment has to be done, and then the safety of the crews has to be taken into account. So that's it for this update. I'm Dave Jones with Storm Center Communications and GeoCollaborate. We'll keep updating through this event. The next update will be probably around 6 o'clock, between 6 and 7 o'clock this evening, unless conditions warrant. Appreciate all the feedback that I'm receiving on these video updates. I'm glad that they're helpful. That's what we're trying to put together with the All Hazards Consortium, Sensitive Information Sharing Environment, and the Fleet Response Working Group to make sure that information can be disseminated from trusted sources in a way in which it can reach multiple people. So combining video updates with GeoCollaborate, the real-time collaborative environment, and the dashboard is something that we think has real promise in the future. So thanks so much for watching. We'll talk to you later today.